Okay, everybody, it is noon and I want to welcome you and thank you for tuning into Distraction Management for Busy Lawyers, this month's webinar for busy lawyers. These monthly webinars are designed to bring you practical information in about 20 to 30 minutes, and this is information that you can implement right away in your practice. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Reid Trautz. Reid is the director of the American Immigration Lawyers Association's Practice and Professionalism Center, where he provides ethics guidance and management advisory services to lawyers to help improve their businesses and the delivery of legal services to clients. He is a nationally recognized advisor, author, and presenter on practice issues, including business law practice technology and legal ethics. He is co-author of The Busy Lawyer's Guide to Success, Essential Tips to Power Your Practice, published by the ABA. He is also a frequent contributor to legal publications nationwide. Reid is an elected fellow of the College of Practice Management and was named to the Fast Case 50 list of global legal innovators. Before I turn it over to Reid, a couple of logistics here. So could you please make sure that you are on mute? For some reason, at my end, I'm unable to mute you on entry. It says that you are, but it's not working that way. So if you have questions, you'll be able to put them into the chat box and we will take them at the end. I will convey them to Reid and he'll answer them. So we will have plenty of time for questions. So Reid, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Susan, and happy to be here today and share this lunch hour with so many busy lawyers. We're going to talk about distraction management today. The idea being that in today's world, we really need to be as productive as we can, and quite frankly, distractions take us away from that. We're really talking about being able to enhance and create goods and services, in our case, legal services, without dramatically increasing our resources. It does get harder to and more expensive to hire people and to have others do work. So if we can do more work in less time, create more productivity, we're going to create a better efficiency, but also more likely profitability as well. So there's a direct correlation between distractions and profitability. The first issue I want to talk about today is we really can't multitask. That there is a myth that goes on when we say we can do things. Now, I do a number of these Zoom conferences. We use them within the American Immigration Lawyers Association to do conferences. And I know a lot of people, like today, have themselves with the video off. Because what happens with telephone conferences and with these types of conferences is that we want to listen, but we want to do something else. We do it on client phone calls. We do it in other types of meetings. We do it when we're driving. And the studies are telling us you can't multitask. You don't get 120% or 140% out of your brain. You can only get 100%. So that means you're not giving it 100% when you're splitting it between two tasks. So try to eliminate that. Don't believe that we can do these things at the same time, because our focus just isn't there. Following on to that is the fact that in our digital world today, we are losing our ability to focus and concentrate. Okay, we are in a sense giving ourselves ADD. We are jumping from one thing to another and hoping that our brain keeps up. But what we're really doing is we're losing the ability to focus on things for a longer term. Right? And this shows up in a couple of ways. One, maybe most famously, is in television commercials. 30 or 40 years ago, you would have a 30-second television commercial, and you might have 5 or 6 or 10 different scenes, different shots, different angles, different images within that commercial. And today, in that same 30 seconds, you have an average of 20, even many more. Why? Because our brain likes that stimulation. But that isn't always good for us, especially as lawyers, especially as we have to focus on writing briefs or focusing on preparing a motion, and we need to have 30, 40, 60 minutes, maybe several hours to really concentrate. And if we keep getting interrupted, that reduces our concentration. And it also has come out in studies that when we move between things, when we're distracted and we have to come back and focus on those things again, it takes more energy to do that. It takes our brain more power. So on days when things are sort of hectic and a little frenetic in the office or in your life, and you're saying, man, I'm tired today, it's not because you physically did more, it's because you mentally did more. And so we can also get more tired by shifting back and forth between things, between distractions, especially email, which we'll cover email and some of these distractions and some of the solutions as we go forward this afternoon. But I wanted to let you know this is grounded in mental health. It's grounded in productivity, in studies. You may remember a few years ago there was a study that said email makes you dumber than if you smoked pot, and the reason is that this energy that it takes to jump between emails does reduce your ability, your cognitive abilities. So one of the things we want to start to do is create longer term concentration, and one of these techniques that's out there is called the Pomodoro technique, and you can look it up on Wikipedia. It's actually quite simple. And the idea is you set a timer, and the person who developed this had a little tomato timer, or Pomodoro in English, in Italian, and he would set it for 25 minutes and say, okay, I'm going to work for 25 minutes, no interruptions, not from a person, not from a device, and see if I can do it. And so my first thing is to challenge you today to set a timer for 25 minutes and see if you can make it that long today, in focusing on one thing and one thing only. Right? I think it will be very difficult to do, and I think then you'll realize what I'm talking about, and I'm only really regurgitating what I'm seeing and hearing and reading from experts, and that is we need to practice longer periods of concentration. So if 25 minutes doesn't work, try 15. Go through there. All right. So that's the basis of it. What are some of the solutions? What are some of the techniques? What are some of the things that we can do to help us in our busy practices on a daily basis? Well, one of those things can be eliminating computer distractions. We get so many distractions from our not only our computers that we're working on, but also from our devices. We have smartphone notifications that we've put out there that we say, tell me when my fantasy football league, there's an update. Well, do we really need all of those? And those are things that force us to look away and focus away from the work that we're doing. And we can't just immediately get back to do what we are concentrating on. Studies show it takes at least a minute, and in some studies it shows even longer for the human brain and for an individual to refocus themselves back to where they were. So getting rid of those distractions so that we're not always seeing them includes social media feeds. I mean, that's nice and important, but let's set aside time during our busy day to look at those things. Let's not just have them pop up when that's when somebody sends us a message or we get mentioned or whatever. We want to reduce spam and bacon. Bacon is much better than spam, right? Nobody likes spam. Everybody likes bacon. Bacon is the kind of newsletter or email that we ask for. Okay, so if we're on a rewards program for an airline or for a hotel, or we get a newsletter from somebody, that is also a distraction. It may be beneficial to us at some point, but does that need to be coming in our email stream? And finally, one of the other distractions in firms that I find is people place their monitor so that they can see their door. And when you can see your door in your office, people can walk by. And I think you already recognize what I'm talking about. People can, grab your attention real quick, or you look up to see who's going by. And again, that's a distraction we do to ourselves. So as I've done in my office is I've flipped that around so that my monitor is on my credenza behind me, and I have a way to slide up to it in my keyboard there. So that's behind me. So I can't see the door unless I physically turn around to see who's there. So I can't be distracted. And I think we do need to go to those kinds of things. Not that we're always shutting out people, but we don't want these things to just happen when other people want them to happen. We want to have control of our day so that we are getting the work done when we need to get it done. There are some technology apps that will help with these kinds of things that will help you find your lost time to help you concentrate. So one of them is Pomo To Do, which helps with the Pomodoro technique. It's basically a timer, but it has more to it than that. It's very inexpensive. Rescue Time is a very interesting product. It's an add-on. It's a web-based product that tracks what you do on your devices during the day, and it gives you a total. It says, okay, you were on, Outlook for this long. You were on Clio for this long. You were browsing this long, and here are the places that you browsed for how long. It shows you where your time goes during the day because we're spending more and more time on our computer devices. For those in smaller firms, it also shows you where your employees may have been going during the day. And so you can track that and see if you're losing productivity to Facebook and other issues. And there's a couple others, including Freedom here, which if you can't help yourself, if you say, hey, I'm addicted to the internet, it will block you from the internet for whatever period of time you tell it to. So if you say, I need the next 30 minutes, don't let me browse on the internet, boom, it will shut you down. It's called Freedom. Now let's talk about some other productivity techniques that help you sort of in this idea of not being distracted, of maximizing your time. And one is a technique called batching. And that is to get things done in batches, similar things done in batches. So return phone calls during a block of time where you can return multiple calls at the same time. It's very helpful to be able to do that. So set time on your calendar. Maybe it's at 11 o'clock every day. Maybe it's at 11 and 4 every day. And you say, okay, I'm going to return the people who called me. See, they may not have gotten through to you. And that's the other thing. They're calling when it's convenient for them. And you might want to take some calls that way. But more and more, we can have those calls come in. We can hear what their question is. We can develop a response and then call them back at a time convenient for us. And even if we can't talk to them, we can often leave a voice message that is much more productive, that moves us closer to that communication. Also, putting things on your calendar, what we call hard and soft tasks. Hard tasks are things like court hearings and due dates, things that are related, that are hard and fast. But then there's some things that we also do as solo and small firm practitioners that we need to get done, and a lot of times we say, well, I'll get that done when I have a little time. Well, it turns out we don't have much time. We have just a little time. So we need to build those in on our calendar so that you have blocks of time where you can work on marketing activities or getting the billing done, so it's not saved to the last possible time during the month, on a Saturday or Sunday. So think about putting these kinds of soft tasks on your calendar as well, and sticking to them, saying, okay, I put it on my calendar to do an hour of marketing 3 days a week. I'm going to be doing that. Again, that helps you batch things together. It keeps you more productive. Also want to optimize your workspace. Your desktop is your workspace. It is not storage space. Having files stored on top of that, it makes it cluttered. It makes us distracted. What does our eye catch on? We should be working on the thing that we're working on now, and maybe we have a very small stack in our inbox. But what's really helpful here is to have storage space nearby, to have a file cabinet nearby, to have maybe a credenza in the back, something where they're out of sight for now, but easy to access so that you know what you're doing. Well, that's very similar now that many of us are going paperless or reducing the amount of paper we have. It's important to do that to our computing space, because more and more that's becoming our workspace. So having 2 monitors, making sure that the settings, the work ribbons, and those things are built for you, right? We got a lot of tasks in that Outlook ribbon and that Word ribbon. How many of those do we use? Can we get rid of some of them and put things in there that would be more productive? And also having the computer space to do it. That's helpful. We can also optimize file storage. I've talked for years about color coding files, right? You have files for different types of cases that are in your office. You can now do that digitally. You can color code things, especially with Outlook, Office 365. Many other products allow you to do color coding, and I'll have another example of that. But that also helps us focus in faster. When we color code things, focuses in faster on things, and our eyes and our mind push out the things. Well, I'm looking for something in green. Well, then my brain knows I don't need to look for something in red. So those are the kinds of little things that we can build into our workflow that will help us with productivity. Another big enhancement, and you may have heard this from Susan and others, but I think a big time saver, big productivity enhancer is practice management software. And there's so many products out there today, but these are the sort of the all-in-one. And we waited for years for this so that everybody does, it's the contact manager. It works with your email. It helps you organize documents. It helps you organize your cases. It helps you with the billing and the timekeeping. And having one product that does it all and that can do it across multiple devices and do it across whether you're in the office or traveling or at home, these are practice enhancers. They really help with productivity. And if you haven't adopted it, I encourage you to take a look at one of these or the other products that are out there, because I think you'll find the productivity improves here as well. I don't want to sound like your mother or your spouse or your doctor, but all of these things help us be more not only productive, but avoid distractions. We also are distracted much easier when we're tired, when we're not in, we haven't eaten well, when we haven't, been as, haven't taken a break. So I'm not saying, hey, everybody has to work all day long. We need to build in breaks, but we build in breaks when it's best for us. And consider an office makeover too. Sometimes the distraction is caused by things like your monitor's in the wrong place, the lighting isn't that good, your chair isn't that comfortable. Okay, so consider an office makeover and make sure the tools that you use in your practice are the right ones for you. All right, so I'm going to cover email for just a little bit here. I know we're got a little bit of time to do that, but to talk about how do we attack email, because I hear from so many people, lawyers around the country, that email is taking over their existence. And we have statistics from a number of different sources that tell us that that's in fact what's happening to a lot of people, that they're getting a lot of emails that very few of them are that important, and that it takes a bit of time recover and focus on the next item. So what are some of the things? You got to have a strategy. And it's not about the technology. The products are in many ways similar, but it's really about human behavior and how do we tackle the email? How do we solve the problem? And as I say, these email tools are beneficial, but we've got to know how to use them to help solve the problem. Now here's a graphic. Many of you may have seen this before. Stephen Covey made it popular a couple of decades ago, but it was actually President Eisenhower who used this. And that is, you look at your tasks, and in this case, you look at emails in 4 different levels. And the question is, what emails should you be dealing with? If you're always dealing with those in category 1, then that's showing you're probably not addressing them. If everything's urgent, if everything's a fire and you're trying to put it out, you may be addressing things too late. But if you're getting a lot of email and it's in number 4, and this is the spam and the bacon I talked about earlier, we got to get rid of it. Okay, we got to either not have it come into our inbox or divert it out of that box, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So one of the things, instead of living in your inbox, it's much better to put things on your calendar and make sure that you are, what your day is about, right? This is really what lawyers are about. What does my day look like? What are the tasks I have in front of me? What are the events that are going to happen? And you can color code, as I am showing here. Use this type of functionality to live and do your work rather than always having your email open, because your email is a big distraction. Here, much less so. You can plan and do today's work and then look at what you have for the coming week as well. As I've mentioned, many of us use the same tools. There's only a few really good options, but how are we using them, right? So it's important that we prevent these unimportant emails from getting the inbox. Unsubscribe or divert them to junk. If you've subscribed to a newsletter and you say, boy, I haven't read that email newsletter in months, get rid of it. You can also use rules, or in Gmail, they're called filters, to divert email. So if you say, I want to get it, I just don't want it in my inbox all the time, you can divert it to a subfolder. Create a rule, using a rule or a filter, and say, I want it to go to a subfolder called bacon. And I have one called bacon that I can look at a couple of times a week when I have a few minutes, but it's not taking up space in that important email feed. I mentioned earlier turning off notifications. That's fairly easy to do now. When you go to in 365, go to options, mail, message options, and click those boxes. You'll want to schedule time to review your email. Remember, I mentioned this with the phone calls earlier. Don't always have that inbox, that feed, and say, hey, what's next? What's next? Schedule several times a day to go and open up that email feed and look at it and say, what is it that I need to respond to here? Don't have it open all day. Because it can suck away our day. It can take away what we're doing from the priorities that we set at the beginning of our workday. So here's a triage tactics. Here's a strategy that I use to attack my emails several times a day. Okay, so I scan and delete the unwanted emails. Again, I may send some to junk. But I get rid of them very quickly, what's open on my screen. Then I'll read the ones I need to read. I'll just read that I'll have the reading pane in Outlook open. And I know others use other products as well, but I think most lawyers are using Outlook, which is why I talk about them. But again, Gmail has some very similar things. I read it, I delete it, or I file it if I need to do that. And I'll put it in a client file. then you can also then at that point in time say, well, I don't need to take action on this. Can I delegate it to someone? Or can I forward it to somebody for their consideration or to do the work? So I quickly do that. And then I'll respond to those emails that will take me 2 minutes or less. Just quick response is needed. I'll do it. It'll be done. But then there comes those that you say, hey, wait a minute, I need a few minutes to do this. I have a folder that says today, and I have a folder that says tomorrow. Now, you may create other folders for yourself, but I'll just quickly drag those into that folder and say, at the end of today, that today folder has to be empty. I know that I have to go to today and empty that. Now, there's also an add-on in Office 365 called Boomerang, and it's an add-in for Outlook, and you can ask that email to come back up at another time. So instead of you could have it come up at 4 o'clock today, and it'll re-enter your box. So there's other ways to do that, but the idea is you get rid of the things quickly and then spend time, calendar time, to respond to the ones that need a little more time. And here's what I mentioned about some of the Outlook rules that you can do. They look different in some of the different products, but they're filters or options. And then one other thing to help you better read, and I've learned this to better read my email box, is we get a conversation going, right? There are multiple emails, that are addressing the conversation, but some of them are just somebody says, yes, I agree, and they're just, we don't need them. But we do want to have the emails that are important to that conversation. Well, you can clean up, and if you see on the screen here, right next to delete, there's a little drop-down menu for a cleanup conversation. It will do that work for you. It will scan the emails and say, okay, you really only need to keep these 4 emails out of that whole conversation because they contain everything. You can also clean up and use this same function for an entire folder that you have in your Outlook. So it's very helpful. So you see, you can clean up a conversation or clean up a folder or clean up a folder and subfolder. That's how it looks in Office 365. And finally here, we're getting down to the end of the presentation, and that is, if you have a lot of email and some of these techniques aren't working for you, there are products that will help you. The email game is kind of fun because it makes a game. You score points for getting rid of emails and doing other things. Unroll Me is a free service. It scans your box and says, okay, you're getting 500, you're signed up to 500 different email or spam. Do you want us to help you get rid of those? They will. And then Sanebox is the one that's getting a lot of attention these days because it's kind of doing what I just talked about strategically. You sign up, it's about $10 a month, 10 or 15 bucks a month, and it lets you do things to your email. You can snooze it. You can set reminders for yourself. There's a number of things that it does. I find that my strategy works for me, and I haven't subscribed to Sanebox, but it's there. And then finally, just this is kind of fun. There are a couple of a lot of us are subscribing to different services today. We get our weather from a weather app. We get certain things from Google, but we get certain things from Apple or Microsoft as well. And a lot of times they don't talk to each other. Well, there are a couple of programs out there. One's called If This Then That, IFTTT, and Zapier, and they will help you do things and make you a little more efficient, so that you don't have to actually deal with some of the issues. Now, here are some interesting ones. So, in Google, if you use IFTTT, it will help you convert an email into a Google Calendar event. Now, you can do that in Outlook already, but they call them, well, they used to call them recipes, but these are ways to get services to work together. So one of my favorites is I have a text message will be sent to me by the Weather Channel if there's more than a 50% chance of rain in the Washington, D.C. area. And it sends it, I have it to send it to me by the time I leave at 7 a.m. So as I go out the door and look, I can look at my phone and say, oh, it is going to rain today. Let me grab my umbrella. And there's other ones that are much more productive, but that's one I think that everybody can sort of identify with. And then the competition here is Zapier. They work with a lot of different groups, mostly in the Google ecosphere, to get you to do things. There's one other that I like, and that is that you can, I travel a good bit, so I can send myself an email, and as long as I have in the subject line travel receipt, when that comes in, Zapier Google will make it go to a spreadsheet that I have for travel expenses and enter it into that travel expense spreadsheet that I have in Google Docs and spreadsheets. Anyway, kind of interesting stuff. So that is the substance of my presentation today. I know we want to stay at that 30-minute limit, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will come back on video. There we go. And take questions. Do we have any questions in the chat box?
Well, if you have some time, I want to keep you on a little bit. I think this was a fantastic presentation. Your tips were really outstanding. And there were a few things that stood out for me. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and perhaps I'll give our audience a little bit of time to post their questions into the chat box.
All right.
So you said a couple of things that were, I thought, so interesting. So you talked about letting your calendar drive your behavior, which I do. So I'm with you on that. What should it look like? Should it look like that every hour in the day is assigned to something, or should it look somewhat different?
Well, it's a personal preference, but as I mentioned about the soft tasks, there's days where I want to fit in a workout, or I have a friend who encourages me to take 2 10-minute walks a day, right? It gets rid of the stress, it gets me out of the office. And if I don't calendar those types of things, I don't do it. And so, my philosophy is, you know what, fill up as much as a day as you think you should, and then if something changes and you say, okay, I have a new client emergency and I'm going to deal with that, I will move something else around. But we can always do more marketing. We can always look at our bills sooner in the month than wait till the end of the month. So yeah, I would kind of fill that calendar up, but I'm not knowing that you're going to be flexible as well.
That's really helpful. And you said something that I also thought, really stuck with me, which was about the soft tasks. And I couldn't agree more. We really should be scheduling them. There's an interesting survey results that Cleo just posted, which is telling us that we're spending like 48% of our time every day on these soft tasks. So kind of keeping track of how we're spending our time can only help. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. The Legal Trends report is an eye-opener, and it's available online. And what it is it's taking the real data. It's not asking lawyers to fill out a survey. It's taking the real data from their practice management software. So it's hard to argue with it. So yes, and keeping track, it can help you. I mean, especially if you're solo or you're solo plus one and you're saying, should I really hire somebody? Can I afford to do that? If you look at where you're spending your time, where big chunks of that are going, and saying, well, maybe I should hire somebody to do that for me, like billing or something else, rather than for me to always do it. That's, this kind of keeping track on your calendar of those soft tasks will help you decide whether you can really have that new person or afford that new person.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I'm a big fan of making data-based or evidence-based decisions because they really do make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I hear a lot about, this kind of pushback, I'm just overwhelmed with everything I do. What are your thoughts about setting aside time for kind of managing things? I guess setting aside time for actually time management.
So we have to give ourselves permission to do this. So many solos started out as associates in firms. What's our role as an associate? To bill hours, to do the work. And when we become that law practice entrepreneur, we expect that we're going to continue to bill and do the same things, and that's just not it. We have to set aside time to do it. And one of my favorite quotes, and I'll use it here, is your billable time determines your income, but your non-billable time determines your future. So with your billable time, fine, but we need to spend invest a little time that isn't billable in building our systems and building our processes and paying attention to what's going on in our firm so we can make the best decisions on how to move forward, and including how to take care of ourselves, which is what a lot of this distraction management is. If we take care of ourselves, we improve what we do, that's going to inure to the benefit of our firm. And then we know, okay, I'm making very good decisions about that. So what's my next step? Whether that's hiring a person, taking on another practice area, opening a second office, however people want to define that.
Well, that's really helpful. So we do have a couple of questions. Are you going to share your slides with us? We have a request for slides. I would say yes.
Yes. Normally they'd be $299, but for today and today only.
So we will have them posted.
No, I'm happy to do it. I will get them to you, Susan.
Thank you so much. So we will definitely have them up on the website, as well as a recording of this program so you can go back. We have another, I think this is a really important question. One issue I struggle with, Bob says, is coordinating Outlook and Google Calendar, Gmail. Are there any products or tips in getting Google and Microsoft to play nice with each other?
The short answer is no. They are really locked in a battle right now. I was just out in Utah last week speaking to the Utah bar, and the state government there has gone away from Microsoft Office and into the Google suite, the G Suite. Many federal government agencies here in Washington are doing the same thing. So those two companies are vying for your attention for their products. So there really isn't much to help integrate those together. And I really do think we're coming to that point where we need to decide: are we gonna be in one ecosphere or another? Are we gonna be in the Microsoft ecosphere or Google or Apple, and Google/Android? Because we're losing productivity if we're trying to do different ones. And there was a time when, Microsoft OneDrive was horrific, and everybody used Dropbox or Google Docs. Well, now Microsoft has put a lot of money. That's a pretty darn good product, especially when you couple it with Office 365. So it's I think we're getting to a point where people just have to choose one, and they're not going to be able to work very well across them.
We have another question from Bob. Do you have any favorite to-do apps? He mentions Toodle-Do, but that it doesn't show through to Google.
Right. Yeah. Because they have to give them permission to do it. I don't have any particularly favorite apps right now. I've used a number of them over the years, both calendaring and to-do kind of apps. So I just think it's finding the ones that work for you. I wish I could be more specific for you than that. But with people having, Apple phones and Google and using it's so hard today to find them. But the companies themselves are doing better at suggesting add-ons to their own products. So you can go to the Google Play Store, or go to Google Chrome, or go to Microsoft Office 365, and they'll suggest sort of these add-ons that may make it easier. That's my best advice today. I know it's not that good, but that's what's out there.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your spending your time and giving us really great advice. So we will have a recording up there and also the slides for you. And a little bit before I tell you what's coming up next month, I want to let you know that if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the Clio data, it is going to be part of our startup workshop today, which goes on at 1 o'clock. And I'm actually going to give you that information right there. If you want to join us at 1 for the startup workshop, I will be talking a little bit about that data and how you might want to use it to make some good decisions about your practice. So I also want to tell you about next month. We are going to have Maggie Watkins, who is the Chief Marketing Officer. She's going to talk about outside looking in, how the customer experience has been used outside the legal industry to attract new customers and keep them happy, and what we can learn from that. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that I see you on our startup workshop in a little bit, and perhaps even next month. Reid, thank you so much again for joining us. This was absolutely terrific.